I want to hear about your time going from, being this retail tech to moving to a retail executive. You were mentioning content, UGC, payments, like you were in that space, essentially developing technology for retailers and telling them what was best, to then now you are at the retailer. Why did you choose to make that switch, and what does it look like, from your perspective?
Sitting on the partner advisory board for Salesforce and actually facilitating a lot of integrations with Salesforce and having a rich history there, building a rich history within that organization as a tech executive was really important to me. And obviously for any startup, aligning yourself with a heavy hitter like Salesforce, you're trying to develop exit strategies is probably a good choice, right? My roots were in deep in that organization. And so the story of how I actually found my way into retail, I think, is kind of a hilarious one. I was actually at a conference out in Vegas, and I was doing one of those like lightning speed dating lesson things where you sit down, you have 15 minutes with a retailer. It was actually with our COO of SNIPES. I sat down to pitch my now boss. I'm pitching her on localization technology, right? I was the chief growth officer at Radius 8, which is a localization tool that eventually exited to Fiserv. And I'm sitting there and I'm telling her this localization story, and she's just eating it up. And I'm like, wow, she's so engaged right now. This is amazing. So she gets, to the end of the meeting and she said, hey, I'm based in Philly. You're in Philly. When we get back, let's get together. We'll have some coffee. Let's keep this conversation going. I thought, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So fast forward to coffee. I'm halfway through the coffee and I'm like, oh my God, I'm on an interview. I had no idea. What is this? Right. So
That's better. You could be your more authentic you without even
that's
knowing.
not a problem for me. I don't know if you've got that already.
That's why I'm already enjoying this interview so much. It's great.
So she kind of makes me this loose offer, and I say, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm a technologist. I'm not a retailer. I was like borderline offended. Like, how dare you think of me as a retailer? And she said something to me that I carry this with me everywhere. She looked at me and she said, my feedback was, I'm not a retailer. I wouldn't even know where to begin. How would I do this? Like, this is absolutely not, right? No, this is my lane. So what she said to me was, Jenna, we have enough legacy retail thinking to last us a lifetime in this organization. And that is not what I'm looking for. We've got that. We don't need that. We need pace. We need innovation. We need grit. We need performance. We need to push boundaries. We need a driver. I really want you to consider it, and I'm willing to swing for the fences. So I was about to go on vacation, and she said, take your vacation. I was like, thanks. Just take your vacation.
Thanks, you're not my boss yet. Okay.
Talk to your wife and really give this some thought. And I did. And the more I thought about it, here's where I ended up. Obviously, I took the role. I ended up thinking, okay, I can come in as a VP of digital in a budding retail organization. Retail is like the military, and you got to start from the bottom and you got to work your way up, right? That's how this works, right? So many people in HQ here started in our stores, in our distribution center, and found their way to climb the ranks, right? So I thought, wow, I get to skip the line and like really get in there at this level. That's a huge gift. But one thing that I was also sold on in the process was the actual ability to go through a Salesforce implementation. So for someone who was so dedicated to that environment as a technologist and building that partnership and relationships within Salesforce, having the opportunity to go on the other side and actually complete a Salesforce implementation would really give me, I thought, the whole package. So for me, the thought was, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to be a spy. I often refer to myself as like a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? I'm kind of over it now. I'm a retailer now. It happened. It's been 3 years. Like, I love it and I'm really enjoying it. But for a long time, I would find myself putting on my retail hat, putting on my vendor hat, putting on my retail and really trying to, and I still do this, to try to learn from these experiences. And if you talk to any vendor that I have bought from, I hope what you would hear is that I approach those negotiations with a ton of empathy, compassion, and transparency, because I know what it's like to be on the other end and not get the data you need to do your job well. That's something that I bring to this equation that I think is unique. And whether I stay on retail forever or I come back to the other side, I think it will be really interesting to be able to take this duality that I have and bring it into, I'm bringing tech into SNIPES, right? Like, will I have the opportunity to bring the concept of retail and buying and budgeting and prioritizing and creating cross-departmental alignment? Like, retail tech sales folks don't know what the hell that means. They don't know how hard that is. They don't know what budgeting really looks like or how flexible or inflexible it is. I also only have one example of how that works. And that's how it works here, right? So even just being here doesn't give me the full picture because the way it works here might not be where it works everywhere else. So I'm kind of just on this ride. I'm on this journey and I'm learning a ton. It's really exciting. And man, making it through the pandemic was like, I feel like I've got my like multiple badges of honor. And over the past 3 years, we've seen 10x digital revenue growth. So yeah, it's nuts.
That's amazing. So when you came in, what did your first 90 days look like? I mean, you mentioned that you were going to be, implementing Salesforce. Was that decision already chosen, or did you kind of come in and say, hey, this is what we should use? And what did the early couple months look like for you?
It's funny. I wish that we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. I'm not exaggerating. It's been 3 years. I have a whole whiteboard in my office. And the first thing that I did when I came into this organization after I had a week or two of what is this? Retail? How does this work? I put the product enablement process on my wall. And it's probably the single most cross-departmental dependent process in the organization, right? It's photography, it's distribution, it's allocation, it's copywriting, it's tech, it's every part of the business is involved in this thing, right? It's even stores. 50% of our orders are filled by stores. So inventory accuracy is paramount. And for me, it was understanding how this thing works and then really understanding what are the key opportunities for efficiencies and pace that I can bring to the table. Because the faster we move, the faster we enable, the faster we sell, the faster we sell through product and turn product, and the more we can buy the next time, right? So that for me, that wheel in the center of our digital universe was something that I could measure, I could evaluate, and parts of it I could really streamline and drive efficiency around. So my first major project was just understanding and absorbing this kind of daisy-chained concept of retail and how these systems work and how they're interdependent. That was number one. Number two was obviously kicking off a Salesforce implementation. What is that going to be? So my first step in that was hiring smart, right? Finding the right people, PMs, BAs, to come in and work with me to define, document, and really architect what this was going to look like. I mean, in year one, I signed 28 contracts, got to call up all my friends and buy their technology. It was pretty awesome. I mean, the benefit of being someone that just scoured conference room floors to absorb every bit of possible tech that I could get into my brain is that I had all of this very real-time context as to who was doing it well and who was doing it poorly, witnessing integrations and hearing retailers' feedback. I had been surveying the industry for 4 years, being at Clutch, which was my predecessor to Radius 8, which is where I built our partnership strategy. So I got to come in and I got to cheat, right? I got to come in with all of this known knowledge and make some of these really heavy decisions. And so for me, it was awesome. I mean, I got to move really fast and I got to flex my tech knowledge really early. I think what was so amazing about coming in here, and this is testament to my boss, Bridget Cooperman, our COO, and it's not too different from how I have developed my own leadership style. I feel this way wholeheartedly. You start with all of my trust. You don't have to earn it. You start with it, you have it, and it's basically yours to lose. And so coming into this environment as a total newbie in the retail industry, having the full support and trust of my immediate boss, who was my advocate and enabler, for better or for worse, it just allowed me to just operate. It allowed me to go and move, and I haven't broken her trust yet. So yeah, a lot of buying, getting deep into the implementation of Salesforce, all the while navigating ourselves as a new, potentially huge market that is a part of a global entity, right? So I would say those are the 3 things that I really, really leaned into. Well, 4 things, if building a team. We had about 10 people here on staff, and we're over 40 now. So it's been a lot.
I mean, that sounds like such a fun role to get into. Like you said, having that trust and being able to just be able to freely do what you wanted to. I mean, that's the kind of things that I'm drawn towards as well. I remember back in the day when I was picking which team I wanted to join at Google, and I was in finance. And so 4 of the 5 teams I got offers from, they were like, you have this process, you do the P&L, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, process, so boring. And then there was this other team, Maps. They were like, we've never had a finance lead. We might acquire the satellite. You can kind of work with the product team. We have this VR thing. And it was all over the place. And I was like, you see me. Okay, that's me right there. So I feel that within your role too, of just go try things, make this work. And yeah, you have the full trust to do what you need to, which is awesome.
And I think it's been really cool because I kind of tease sometimes and say, I made some really big kid decisions in those early days. And I bought MuleSoft. Like, little baby websites, don't buy MuleSoft, right? That just doesn't happen, right? But I knew what we were doing and I knew we were headed and I knew the vision that we had for the business and the roadmap that was already proven in Europe. And I just knew that we had to do it. And so we've built this really beautiful, strong foundation from which we've been able to grow. I will say that it's getting to the point now where it's less startup-y and we're kind of leaning now into needing a little bit more of that process and repeatability and predictability. We're finding our way through that now, which is good. Well, for some, harder for others. We're kind of exiting that adolescent phase now and we're getting much more established in how we operate, the technology that we leverage, how our data is governed, right? All of that is getting much more stable and clear. Now we're in a place where we've got a really solid team and we want to be leveraging our technology to expedite our outputs, right? Put all of that to work. And that's really where we're at now. Not doing a ton of buying. We have some major projects that are coming up that are super cool, but a lot of this year and the first half of next is really going to be honed in on exploiting the technology that we currently have in place.
Hey, thanks for watching. This segment was made possible by our friends at Salesforce Commerce Cloud. If you're looking for the #1 platform for all your commerce needs, go check out salesforce.com/commerce. And don't forget to subscribe below and tap that little bell icon so you can stay on top of all the amazing new segments and full episodes that we'll be putting out over the coming year with some of the best and most influential commerce leaders out there.